Footage from the 80s there. Now, Jeff Widener captured that iconic picture of Tank Man. Widener was a photo editor for the Associated Press at the time, and he joins us now from Honolulu. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us. First off, if you would, tell us how you were able to capture this moment and what was going through your head when you saw that man stand in front of the tanks.
Well, it was pretty amazing. I was actually suffering from the flu for the previous week. I'd been in Beijing. And the night before, I was slammed in the face by a rock during a burning armored car incident. So when I was actually taking that photograph, I wasn't feeling at my best. And at first, I thought that the tanks were going to run over him or shoot him. And I waited and waited, and nothing happened. But the picture was too far away, so I put another lens on to make it a much more telephoto lens. And that's what I made the photographs with, and I only got one that came out sharp.
And now when you look back at this photo 30 years later, do you feel the meaning of your photo has changed?
Well, I'll tell you, this thing's grown in stature over the years. It's amazing the reaction I get from people when they find out that I was one of the photographers who made it. And it's just incredible. I think a lot of people relate to this because it represents a lot of their struggles in life and what they're trying to accomplish. So I would say it's actually growing in stature. Mm-hmm. So if the Chinese government is trying to squash it, they're not doing a very good job of it.
I know. Well, and you look at that picture and automatically you want to know, who is that guy? Everyone wants to know who that man is. Is his identity still a mystery?
Well, there's all kinds of rumors floating around about who he could be, but nobody really knows for sure. I don't know if we ever will, but I think the fact that we don't know him adds a lot more power behind the statement that he made. He's almost like the unknown soldier. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it has all the elements that makes this mystery stronger. We don't know who he is. We may never know who he is. And it's really an incredible story.
And so could you, if you would, describe to us how those events unfolded 30 years ago? When did things take a turn and start to become violent?
Oh, wow. I would say that was on the night of June 3rd. I was with another AP reporter, and we were riding our bicycles to, just check out the scene because it was relatively quiet. But things started getting heated when a burning armored car came down the street, and people were throwing rocks, and I was attacked. My cameras are pulled off me. I was running low on battery power, so I kept looking at my flash, waiting for it to recycle. And all of a sudden, I just got a bam in the face, and I looked down, and my camera was smashed. The lens was ripped off. It was bleeding everywhere. And I was just knocked silly. And finally, once I got my head together, I went back to the AP office to bring the rolls of film, and the camera was so damaged they had to pry the film open in the darkroom. And at that moment, I had a chance to go back out in the street, but I just couldn't do it. I was too sick and too injured, and I basically just chickened out. I felt guilty about it. I felt terrible about it, but looking back, it probably saved my life because I know I would have been right up there at the front lines. And with a flash, you're a target. So I probably made the right decision.
And did you witness from where you were up there at that vantage point, did you witness some of the worst violence?
Well, what I saw wasn't pretty, okay? There's a dead soldier on the ground where the burning armored car was. And then the door of the burning armored car came out. Another soldier came out to surrender. And the mob moved in on him and started beating on him with clubs and sticks. And I don't think he made it. But I was attacked and somehow talked my way out of it and managed to get back to the AP office. I'm very fortunate I'm very lucky that happened. And so, yeah, I saw, the short amount of time I saw, there was some nasty stuff going on.
So, the photo may be buried in China. Unclear whether or not it's forgotten because we have no way of checking with the Chinese people. But has anyone from China or any, Chinese citizens ever talked to you about that photo or talked to you about that day? Well,
I've had a few situations where they were surprised when they found out I made the photo. I spoke to a high university this year, and one Chinese student came up to me and she thanked me and said, "Mr. Widener, I want to thank you so much for showing this picture and what happened in China. I knew nothing about it." And then there's been other situations where, like I was in Las Vegas one time, and I had a picture of the tank man, and I showed it to a family, Chinese family, and they literally ran off. They just got scared and ran off. So there's different reactions from different people. You know, I've had situations where, like, during the Olympics in Atlanta, the Xinhua news agency, the Chinese news agency, was posing with selfies with me. I mean, even they were getting involved with it. So it has different reactions to different people.
And do you sense that the story of that day is totally buried in China, or do you sense that perhaps there is some lore that exists?
Well, come on, they got VPNs all over China, on mainland China, okay? And the government's trying to shut them down any way they can. But you got to remember, you got Hong Kong, and you got family members going back and forth, and they're talking. And, you know, the Chinese government's pretty smart. I just don't get it, why they keep trying to repress this thing. I mean, I've mentioned before in other stories, other articles and interviews that, you know, the United States and Europe has made mistakes, and they've reconciled these differences. And I think it's time for China to, you know, move on, you know, and admit what happened, and let the family members know where their loved ones, how they ended up, and move forward.